Today, we are going to discuss the absolute sneakiest financial mistake that Gen Z must avoid. Because it's not too late for Gen Z. For many of the other generations, as I'm going to show you, they're doomed and they have sold away their financial future. It's already over. To begin our conversation and look at the facts, we're going to begin here. Boom. Share of Americans living paycheck to paycheck rises to 63%. That is a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. I think you and I can both agree you don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. The moment you lose your job, if you're depending on your paycheck every 2 weeks, is the moment you find devastation and financial ruin forever. You'll start finding yourself taking out loans from sketchy places, maxing out your credit cards, eventually going bankrupt, end up being homeless, and starving on the streets. For some people, it's like that. Other people just have a shitty life. Let's get some more data up. We are going to be looking through a report called the Paycheck to Paycheck report. By the end of our analysis here, I promise you, you're going to be pretty depressed. Fact number 1. Consumers who live paycheck to paycheck hail from all generations. Take that in for a moment. You would think that as people age up, they get promotions, they make more money, and then because of that, they start to not live paycheck to paycheck. If you're at the bottom of the corporate ladder, you're living in a place that has high rent, maybe you're living in the city, you can see how you end up paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet. But then you get 2 promotions and all of a sudden you're free. Your burden is gone. But the data says otherwise. The data says actually a lot of people who start off paycheck to paycheck will never leave their paycheck to paycheck lifestyles. This is data from December 2021. We're going to look at the top line for each of these. And looking at that, we see that every single generation has over 50% of their members living paycheck to paycheck. Baby boomers and seniors, 54.1%. Generation X, nearly 60%. Bridge millennials, is that a thing? Sure. Bridge millennials, 70.4%. Millennials that are a little bit younger, just under 70%. And Gen Z is already at a rocking 65%. Take that in. Take that in. Even as people have aged up, moved up in the workforce, gotten promotions, they still struggle. Now, some of these people are screwed from the get-go. I wish to acknowledge that right now. Some people are born into poverty and will stay in poverty. Not everybody will realize how to escape or will have the opportunities to escape. But there is data that shows that some people have a choice here. Some people actually have a way out and they chose not to take it. Let's take a look at some more data from this report. Consumers in all income brackets live paycheck to paycheck. Over 40% of people making 100K are living paycheck to paycheck. Clearly, there's a big problem going on, and this is the great mistake, the sneaky mistake. Just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you're going to be financially successful. Building wealth means you actually have to invest money. But clearly, just based on the factual data we're looking at, clearly there is a trap where people who have the opportunity to succeed are not doing it. So we're going to story time. We're going to go to story time from my time when I worked at Vanguard. I was just starting out when I worked there, and I was talking with 2 different people on 2 different occasions about where they shop for groceries. Bear with me. I promise you, the grocery story, it's a good one. It's a good lesson. I was sitting in my cubicle, and I'd struck up a conversation with a young person my age in their 20s, and she mentioned how she shops at Wegmans. Now, Wegmans is a great grocery store. They're not known for being expensive. They're not Whole Foods, but they aren't cheap either. They have great quality stuff, and you pay a moderate price. It's a good deal. But our salaries starting out at Vanguard were not great. At this point, I was shopping at Aldi's, and I love Aldi's. I still shop there to this day. It's the best bang for your buck. You get decent food at rock bottom prices. And I have to be really honest. When I was talking with this person and they mentioned Wegmans, I was jealous. I felt behind. I felt left out. I would like nicer food. I would like all my produce to be 10 out of 10. But my salary said, John, I need to get moderate food at a low price. Later that year, I struck up a conversation with another coworker about groceries. Look, I don't just talk about groceries. It comes up though. We're all trying to find our way in the world. We're in our early 20s. She told me how she gets her groceries from a local store that offers really, really cheap prices for food that's about to expire. Meaning she's getting unbelievably low prices, but she's giving up the freedom to really pick her meals. She might be getting stuff cheaper than I'm getting it at. In the short term, in terms of enjoying yourself, the person shopping at Wegmans is making the most of their money. They are getting a lot of pleasure from it. But I would bet you, in the long term, the girl who is shopping the food that's about to expire and myself, who's shopping at Aldi's, we're going to do better financially in the long run. We are choosing willingly to shop in a way that gets us immediately out of the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, which, for the record, at this time, we are around 50, 40K for our salaries. We are not in this 100K category, just letting you know right now. If you're making 100K, for the record, you can shop at Wegmans and still not be paycheck to paycheck. The takeaway from this story is simple. The person who's bringing the nice food every day might enjoy themselves now, but it is the people who are bringing the less nice food over the long term that are going to be financially successful. So why is this person spending so much money on nice food? Let's talk about conspicuous consumption, because that explains a lot about what's going on. And this has to do with more than just groceries. This has to do with the fact that people like to flex on each other. That's right, they like to show off, making it rain. This is a concept coined from Veblen, which talks about how people like to use their money to show off their wealth because it gives them social status. Having nice groceries gives you a little bit. It's more common with things like nice clothing, for example, or even, in my opinion, being able to brag about going to nice places, going on trips, etc. All these things indicate that you have money to spend. You can drop the big bucks. But we also know that people are engaging in this practice in a manner that doesn't make any sense for wealth building. They're living paycheck to paycheck. Meaning what's smart for you might be to appear less rich, because some of the people who are appearing rich in the short term are doing it by going paycheck to paycheck. You'll never beat them unless you join them as part of this 40% or 60% or 70%, depending on which income bracket you're in. Conspicuous consumption is dangerous. It plays on our behavior. We want to brag to the world, but the people who are bragging right now might not have any money for retirement later on. They'll live paycheck to paycheck for the rest of their lives, endlessly appearing at the top of the economic pyramid. But when they go to retire at 70, they will have nothing. Nothing at all. There's a famous financial book that captured this concept unbelievably well. It's called The Millionaire Next Door. If you have not read it, go track down a copy. This book explored the creation of millionaires and what their common traits are. And their common traits, unsurprisingly, is that they try not to spend tons of money so they can invest it. That makes sense. Instead of buying a new car, they'll buy a used car and invest the difference. The book found, quote, that millionaires are disproportionately clustered in middle-class and blue-collar neighborhoods and are not in more affluent or white-collared communities. This came as a surprise to the authors, who anticipated the contrary. The average millionaire did not get to be a millionaire by spending tons of money. They got to being a millionaire by being conservative with their money, buying a used car, shopping at a reasonable grocery store instead of Whole Foods. They got there by being smart with their money. The more important factor with finding financial success is not actually how much money you make. It's the mentality you apply to the money you make. You want to have the mentality that has you shopping at Aldi's or eating food that's nearly expired. You don't want the mentality that says, hey, I'll live paycheck to paycheck now, and later when I get a raise, I'm sure I'll just take that raise and save it. A lot of people don't. Remember that generational graph? Most people will live paycheck to paycheck, generation to generation. You need to know enough to acknowledge that your peers who have tons of money might be doing that because they're not saving any money at all. They're screwing over their financial future for dopamine in the present. And if you get caught up in that, you're going to be financially screwed just like them. And know that the path to becoming rich has a lot more to do with how you spend your money than it does with how much you make.